2021 is pretty much over, ladies and gentlemen. I'd say this was a good year, but who am I kidding? We all know this year was fucking horrible. Just like the previous one. So I summed up some of my favorite TV shows of this year and ranked them from, fine I guess, to holy shit, that was epic. Now, to be completely honest, I'm not a huge TV show kind of guy, and I haven't seen all the great shows that are out there. Mainly because it's a pretty time-consuming activity. So if you have any recommendations for me, please leave them in comment section below. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into this. This year was a great year for all the Marvel fans out there, cause Disney gave us 5 TV series based on their MCU saga. Some of them were fine, others not very fine. My least favorite one would be the What If show. I wouldn't say it was a straight out bad one. The animation was cool and I liked the concept. It's just everything was so rushed and felt distant from actual MCU, it was kinda hard to take things seriously or feel invested in the story. Of course I didn't hate it, but apart from few really good episodes, the show didn't have much value for me. But that's just my opinion. Coming up next we have Hawkeye. Pretty mediocre show overall, with predictable story, fine action and some enjoyable character interactions. Now, Clint Barton is not the most popular Avenger, and it's no surprising. I mean, come on, with all due respect, bow and arrow? Who the fuck does that? And I know it kinda like his thing, it looks cool and stuff, but if you know a thing or two about military affairs, you'd agree with me that it's ridiculously impractical to use bow and arrow in a narrow hallway, so from time to time it kinda feels unnatural and even childish. Next we have the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Look, I got a bit complicated relationship with this show. From one side we have a couple of interesting characters, pretty cool action, some humor and some compelling moments. But from the other side we got an antagonist needlessly turned into a martyr, who has a very questionable moral code and advocates for a violence even against innocent people, as long as you do it for the quote-unquote right cause. Now I know that the events of the show center around humanity trying to cope with devastating economic effects of disappearance of 3 billion people for 5 years, which is a bloody hard issue. But the direction that the show chooses to go with this concept isn't really working, and don't even get me started with all the subtle political message.
I think I can smell shite.
Wandavision. Okay, this one was very interesting, at least for a while. It was mysterious, weird, unique, had an emotionally compelling story and experimental style. It also felt like a psychological thriller. But ultimately, especially in the last episode, WandaVision turned into standard CGI battle between good and evil, which failed to match with the tone that the first few episodes had set. All the deaths were cheapened by the fact that Marvel rarely kills important characters for good, and even the dramatic moments weren't that dramatic after the show itself admits that no death is permanent here, and sooner or later things are gonna get back to normal.
No one who dies here ever really dies.
Next we have Loki, probably my favorite MCU show for now. I'll admit, the way first few episodes went on didn't really impress me, especially after seeing stuff like this.
This isn't about you.
I thought the whole thing is gonna turn into shite.
Yes, I can definitely smell shite.
But the show kinda managed to convince me otherwise. I'm not saying it didn't have problems, it did, a lot actually. But the overall conclusion and final episode, which introduced us to some very interesting concepts and a really good character, pretty much saved the whole show for me, proving once again that how you end the show is equally important as how you started. Did you hear that? Game of Thrones. Okay, we're done with Marvel, so let's get to Witcher Season 2. Definitely a huge improvement over its predecessor. Thanks fuck we don't have to deal with all the messed up timelines like in the first season, where the first episode is kinda like the last episode and the last one is the first. Who the hell thought making a fantasy adventure into Christopher Nolan's Memento was a good idea? Anyway, the season 2 mostly follows main events of the show, so there are no unnecessary filler episodes like in Mandalorian or in the first season for that matter. The story is pretty interesting, though a little bit predictable. Performances are overall good, though Henry Cavill steals the show most of the time. Action is pretty solid and occasional humor lightens the atmosphere, Jaskier serving as the main source of comic relief.
Oh, you are always so emotional. And it's just yap, yap, yap with you sometimes. Oh, yes.
Yaska. I'm so sad and complicated.
Shut up, Yaska.
You shut up. That is a perfect impression of you, by the way.
Now, I never had the chance to play any of the games or read the books about Witcher, so I can't say for sure how faithful is the show to its source material. But as a separate work, Witcher Season 2 was quite entertaining for me. 2021 also gave us South Park Vaccination Special and two-part minifilm called Post-COVID. As always, South Park managed to mock the modern reality in its unique fashion while telling a ridiculously funny story about beloved characters. It's a really strange show and it's not for everyone. Definitely not for kids.
Who has something that they want to share? Mr. Garrison.
I'd like to share my dick in your mouth.
I'd say it's all a matter of personal preference. If you love sarcastic, offensive, over-the-top humor, then welcome to the club. Speaking about animated shows that are not for kids, we also had Rick and Morty Season 5 this year. I know a lot of people say that the show lost its touch with the audience and it's not as cool as it used to be. And while I would agree that the earlier seasons were much more creative, I don't think the show became that bad. Yeah, there are some blatantly lame episodes, but the show still managed to be unique and entertaining. Besides, we're talking about one of the most meta, weird and unconventional series out there. It's kinda hard to hold it to constructive criticism because there aren't any solid standards for this show. I guess in this case, just like with South Park, you either love it or hate it, and there are plenty of reasons for both. Now, with all this out of the way, it's time to address best of the best, the absolute badass shows of this year. First one will be Invincible. When I started to watch this show, I thought it's gonna be another boring superhero animated film for kids. But then this happened. And I was like, what? What the fuck? Surprisingly, Invincible turned out to be a very mature and serious show. The story was so compelling that I had to watch all the episodes back to back. As a result, I was late for work the next day. And you know what? It was absolutely worth it. Invincible tackles the well-known theme of evil Superman, but managed to do that better than any other film I've ever seen. From one side we have Omni-Man, a super powerful, practically unbeatable creature from another planet who vowed to protect humanity. At first glance it's basically Superman with a mustache, but soon we realize that Earth's best defender might just be its biggest threat. From the other side we have Mark Grayson, Omni-Man's son who inherits his dad's powers and becomes a superhero taking the name Invincible. It's a young, inexperienced kid that is tormented between blind love and admiration for his dad and gradual realization of bitter truth about his father's true identity. With its very well written story and character development, to the point that even secondary heroes are quite interesting, the show culminates in absolutely brutal and breathtaking finale that will leave you in awe. Probably the only inconsequential aspect that I didn't like about this show was Ember, the main romantic interest of Mark Grayson. It's a very annoying and preachy chick whose level of self-entitlement will probably piss you off. So basically there's a scene where she's with Mark and they are all cool and happy, but then a sudden threat arises which forces Mark to disappear and return there as his alter ego, Invincible. After defeating the enemy and saving everybody, Mark returns to his girlfriend and she's angry to him. Rightly so, because from her perspective it looked like he cowardly ran away leaving his friends and girlfriend without help. So to fix this situation, Mark decides to tell her about his secret identity. And how does she respond? She says that she's not stupid and she already knew it.
You serious?
Well then what the hell are you bitching about, you stupid cunt? I mean, what seems to be the problem, young lady? If you knew that he's a superhero, then you knew that he's not a coward and he disappeared to save you and everybody else. You're welcome, by the way. So if you were fine with him before the incident, allow me to ask, what changed afterwards? You know, she actually reminds me of another Amber, a very good and decent human being that used lies and manipulations to fuck up Jack Sparrow's career so bad that even Davy Jones himself couldn't dream about it. But let's leave that for another time. The next one that I'd like to talk about is Squid Game. You've probably heard about this South Korean Netflix show that broke all the records and became a worldwide phenomenon. People believe it's a harsh criticism of unfair and corrupt capitalistic societies, so based on that assumption, some people say it's good, others say it's bad. I say, quit politicizing whatever you see and just enjoy the show for God's sake. Not every piece of entertainment has to serve as propaganda machine for political agendas. Yes, you can see any subtext you wanna see, but the truth remains the same. It's a show about bunch of poor, unlucky people voluntarily playing death game for prize money and entertaining bunch of rich cocksuckers who got bored from their yachts, hookers and cocaine therapies. Of course life is not fair, but almost all the contestants got to their current predicament due to poor choices they made throughout their lives. In fact, the only person who deserves any sympathy is this girl, who fled pretty much democratic and very capitalistic North Korea and needed the money to save her family. Besides, a Netflix show with almost $1 billion revenue advocating against capitalism seems a bit too hypocritical, don't you think? It's like if Walter White used all his money that he earned from cooking meth to fight war against drugs.
You're goddamn right.
So the Squid Game is a great show. It has amazing cast, compelling story, enjoyable characters, and it keeps you on the hook till the end. And while I didn't like how this show dealt with some of its characters, I still enjoyed it very much. And the last show on today's list will be Arcane, probably one of the best if not the best video game adaptation I've ever seen. Based on a game called League of Legends, which I obviously never played or even heard about, this show amazed me from its first minutes. Incredibly good animation, deep and relatable characters with solid motivations, awesome soundtracks, well-written plot and rich lore with plenty of opportunities to tell good stories. Honestly, I got nothing bad to say about this show. Huge respect to those behind this masterpiece. I'll simply take off my hat, whatever hell that's supposed to mean. And that was it for this video. This was all based on my opinion, so make sure to share yours in comment section below. I'll see you next time. Peace.